Truancy Mediation. What's that? A show with guest Danette Ross Watson, part of the series Mediation Tips by Fran. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hi again, everyone. This is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator working throughout Florida and Texas.
And I am Natalia Orłowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And I'm Fran Brochstein, an attorney and mediator in Texas. And my guest today is Danette. She is president-elect of the Texas Association of Mediators, and she's currently the TAM Outreach Chair. And she also is the founder of the West Texas Community Mediation Center in Big Spring, Texas, located outside Midland. Danette, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
I would appreciate it, Fran. Thank you again for this opportunity to come on and speak with you all. I wanted to just first of all say that the West Texas Community Mediation Center, I founded it with my husband, Philip Watson, but I'm also the executive director. So we've been doing a lot of exciting things here in Big Spring. The city of Big Spring donated this building to us, and we have had so many wonderful partners and sponsors, such as the Delek Oil Refinery, Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart. We've had some wonderful funders. We are also now a United Way's agency partner. So that's a list of some. You'll notice that there's a list of some of our partners that are joining us in this endeavor. And we are so excited to be bringing community mediation and our topic for today, truancy mediation, to this Big Spring area.
Hey, Danette, before you continue on, just also wanted to make sure that people understand we're screen sharing her website right now. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can certainly catch it. But if you are on audio, listen to a podcast, check out the YouTube channel so you can see what we're showing you. That's West Texas Community Mediation Center, WTXCMC.org. And also we have up solomonsway.org, which is, Donna, can you speak a little bit about solomonsway.org?
Yes, thank you, Mac. solomonsway.org is another organization that I founded. It's my private mediation practice, where I also deliver federal EEO services. I've been working with Solomon's Way since 1999, bringing mediation to West Virginia, the DC metro area, and now we're here in Texas. So it's been my pleasure to continue my mediation practice. I've been mediating for over 25 years in these various fields.
Thank you. And this information will be at the description portion of the YouTube video, as well as on instantmediations.com's blog page. All right, Natalia?
So I'm excited to have learned that you, all three of you, so Fran, Danette, and Mac, attended a training organized by West Texas Community Mediation Center on mediation in education. I think that involving people into mediation process and making them understand what it is and what good it can do to you, it's really an important part of educating people in general. So my first question is, we wanted to talk about truancy mediation, which in itself is very interesting, as truancy regards absences in school. So, Danette, since you're a specialist on this field, can you tell us what really the truancy mediation is?
Thank you. And I'm glad you asked, Natalia, because truancy mediation involves a real cycle of, I guess I want to say almost like it's our students in crisis, because they are not coming to school. They're not getting the education that they need to succeed in their future. So truancy mediation is just another option that we're asking the schools to use in order to see if we can bring these students back to school. You know, the schools are desperately trying to find opportunities and seek other options for truancy preventive measures, because if they don't have students in those seats, they're losing federal funding as well. So COVID and a lot of the effects from COVID have kept children out of school. And that has also, affected the funding that the schools are receiving. Now, the federal government did give a lot of the schools different federal money, but at the same token, the schools are now back in their 21 to 22 session for this year, and we're having the same issues. The students still aren't back in their seats. They're not getting the education that they need. They're dealing with bullying. They're dealing with cyberbullying. Even here in Texas, they've added a new law that all bullying situations need to go to mediation. So they are pushing for mediation. So while we have this sudden push for mediation in schools to help resolve some of those in-school conflicts, we also want to make this push for the truancy mediation as well.
So, Danette, why do we need it?
Well, we need it because we need as many options and opportunities to reach our students and these families as possible. The West Texas Community Mediation Center, one of the things that we'll be offering is a mentoring and computer lab to assist with tutoring. So we're trying to do what we can so that the students that do want to try to get back in school, that are trying to get caught up if they fell behind, we're trying to give them those opportunities and another avenue for, just like I said, getting caught up with the lessons that they've missed, or if they've fallen behind in their schoolwork in some manner. And for those even that were retained to the lower grade because they weren't able to pass because they weren't in school, again, because of attendance and truancy issues.
So, Danette, before you speak a little bit about who is involved and who are all the participants in this,
Yes.
before that, years ago, before law school, I went to work at elementary school. I taught second grade, and I loved it. But I remember this issue of truancy always being something that came up. And I remember a few students who just were chronically absent. And it was no surprise that by the end of the year, when you've taken the, final year examinations, that the students who missed a lot of days, a lot of class, a lot of instruction, were the ones who also suffered the most. So this whole topic has a direct impact on just families, right? And society in general, because we speak about global competition amongst nations and trying to give our kids the best opportunity to succeed. But something as, we might say, as small as this, something as just one little factor can be playing a huge role in the total outcome of our state and our country. So tell us, who are the different actors in this whole saga? Who's involved in truancy mediations?
All right. And thanks for asking, Mac. And I appreciate your story as well, because that's so true. And so what we're asking is that the parents get more involved and finding out, even with the schools, I know that, our teachers are overburdened, they're underpaid, but we're asking them to do so much more in trying to find the resources for these families and find out what the situation is. So during truancy mediation, that's one of the things that we can do. We can ask the schools to sit down with these parents to actually find out what's going on. If there are resources that they need that they just don't have. We find out that students are homeless and the parents are doing the best thing that they can to get them to school and to find, places where they can bathe and do their homework, whether it's to go to the library until it's dark or, get up and go to the Y for a shower. So, homelessness is not a crime. And so these parents are struggling. They're trying to get the kids to school. We're trying to find out what's going on, the embarrassment that they feel, the shame or whatever. We need to try to put that aside and, assist them in obtaining whatever resources they need. So we're asking community services to get involved. We're asking the parents to get involved. We're asking the schools and the teachers to get involved. And before it gets to court. So the truancy mediation can happen before these registrars at these schools put them in for truancy, and then the family has to be in the court process. And, it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, state to state, country to country, but there are fines that are imposed or even jail sentences that are imposed. The students here in Texas, up until 2015, it was a felony. It was a felony for them not to attend school. Once they removed that barrier, now it's like, now what do we do? What type of consequences can we bring on the students or on those families that are, they're mitigating circumstances, of course, that we need to find out and how to reach them. But I mean, if you add criminal charges to it, that does not help the situation. It's all punitive and it's not corrective action.
Natalia, can I follow up with one thing? Thank you for bringing that up. And that
Sure.
is, for people who don't know, the traditional method, one of the traditional methods of how governments and local governments, especially, and school boards have dealt with this problem has been to put it into the legal system and basically fine parents, right? Cite them for not bringing the child to school. And the assumption was, well, the child's probably just sleeping or they're being lazy, and the parent is not doing the thing that they need to do to make sure the child shows up to school, and therefore that hurts the child long term. But that approach it might work to a degree, but it has not resolved the problem, right? It hasn't resolved the problem. We still have this chronic issue, especially now with COVID, dissipating to a degree and schools are opening back up. We're all like, well, there's children. I think Natalia was telling me about this in Poland. There's children who just disappeared. We don't know where they are. And so this whole approach is not new. It's more common sense. It's a way to actually get down to the problem and address it in a different way that's probably more effective. Okay, like you said, it will help you find out if the child's homeless. Maybe that's the reason. It helps uncover a lot of reasons to why this might be happening. So Natalia, please, I stole your thunder there.
You are actually right. In the Warsaw itself, which is a city of somewhere like a little bit below 2 million inhabitants, during the COVID online learning, there were like more than 600 students that disappeared from the education system.
Yes.
Entirely. And that could have been for many reasons, for not having the means to connect to the internet, not having the computer itself, or being even ashamed of showing your surroundings to the teachers, because you were learning from home and you were actually letting your teachers into your home. And so, of course, there were different things being done to find those. Actually, the burden was vested with the teachers to try and find those kids, but that wasn't really very successful. And therefore, I'm really intrigued by this topic. I know that Polish approach to absence from school, so truancy, is to try and catch the parents and make them responsible for what happened. And therefore, we also believe, and this is the approach of the courts, that the kids who are actually not attending school and have a lot of missed hours of education are being perceived as demoralized, because what else are they doing if they are not at school? Usually they're unfortunately trying drugs, trying illegal things. And therefore, again, it is the parents who are to be involved into the court proceedings for that, and sometimes even punished for that. And also the cure for truancy is sometimes the kids being taken to foster care, which is again a pity, because you have to work with the family and the school to make everybody aware of the issue is, and try to learn, help, and not to stigmatize especially the kid. And you also mentioned, Danette, that it can be used on various stages of what happened. So when is truancy mediation used?
It can be used in various scenarios. And Natalia, I want to just back up to something that you just mentioned as well. And that is that, the children that are taken into foster care, because, some schools and some systems actually believe that taking the children from the parents, because it's a form of neglect, they consider it a neglect on the parents' side, that they aren't getting the kids to school. So that becomes another issue. All right. And so that's why truancy mediation and mediation in any form can be used to assist these parents. And the parents can request the mediation just as the schools can or the courts can. The beauty of mediation and conflict resolution is that it can be used at any part of the process during, whether it's at the beginning stage when the parents are first finding out that the school is notifying them of attendance issues, and it can be used when they do send them to truancy court. The courts can say, well, we're going to refer this to mediation before we do any type of adjudication. So it's a matter of, what the parents, what the students, because of the age, depending on the age of the student, they can certainly request something through their school as well as their parents before it gets to that point. And so that's really what we want to do. We want to use mediation as an intervention before it gets to the court. And that's in any legal process. We always want to try to use mediation first, because you always want to try to resolve any conflict or negative situation at the lowest level. So if you think about, mediation coming in at the lowest level possible, then you also find out that, hey, mediation can be used anytime, at any time. So we hope that, bringing an awareness to truancy mediation, bringing an awareness to some of the other conflicts that our students are dealing with in school that, creates these attendance issues. Everything from racial biases and bullying and cyberbullying to everything that happens that makes the children not want to come to school. So when they don't want to come to school, that affects their learning ability. That affects, the relationship that they have with other students. That affects the relationships that they have with their teachers. And some of the teachers, because they're, like I said before, overburdened in the classroom, they don't have time to give that individual attention to that student. And so the students are crying out, in negative behavior, but what they're doing is they're crying out for help. They're crying out for attention. And so instead of working with that student, they end up in detention. They end up being suspended or expelled, and that doesn't help the school and doesn't help the student either. So again, it's punitive instead of being corrective or getting an understanding as to what is going on with that student. And that's where I believe mediation can come into play even then. So mediation in schools can be used at any stage of discipline, at any stage for attendance issues, and here in truancy. So if we could just get enough people to just be aware that mediation works, that it works in all of these different processes and for all these different types of issues, then it would be easier for the schools to understand when we come to them that we're there to help. But they see it, it's a funding issue. It's always about funding. It's about funding. And so if we can get funding from our area, especially for my situation, we're a nonprofit organization. So I asked for funding for school mediation. I asked for funding to assist our students with learning and with staying in school so that the community benefits. Because we have to remember that the pipeline from school to prison, all of that has to be intervened. And so you need a process or a program that's going to intervene. And that's what truancy prevention measures are all about. And that's what mediation is all about. So our profession has this opportunity, this time and space to really make a move into helping our schools and helping our students, helping our families to be more productive and to succeed, because there's so many social and emotional distresses right now and stresses that we are all dealing with, that we have to take consideration in options and opportunities that are going to be healing processes, restorative processes that'll bring us back to where we need to be. And that is for our students, butts in the seats.
Thank you. And I wanted to bring Fran in. Yesterday, Fran, you were at the training that Danette had, set up for this topic. Could you give us your thoughts on how that training went? And then Danette, you can follow up, of course, with what your organization is doing to train mediators on this.
Her training was very insightful because I like the holistic approach they take. Yes, the child may not be going to school, but that may be the tip of the iceberg. I grew up with learning disabilities. They were not, and those, listen, I'm old, so a long time ago, I was just told I was stupid and I couldn't learn to read. And we discussed that quite a bit yesterday. And I learned the hard way how to deal with stuff on my own, how I learned to read. And I always joke my first grade teacher would probably be shocked that I'm now an attorney, because once I learned to read, I learned to love to read. But I could not put it together in the first grade. And so once again, Danette's group and this training was so informative because so many of us just learn differently. We have different abilities, and instead of calling them disabilities, well, let's call them abilities. And so this was just a fascinating talk yesterday about how to help the children, but also in many cases, how to help the entire family. Because a lot of times there are things going on behind the scenes that no one knows about because, as Danette pointed out, the embarrassment. So Danette, thank you again for putting that on. It was a fascinating day. It was a long day. It was from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. It was a long day. And I left with a headache because I had so much new information in my brain.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that, Fran, because that's really what we wanted to do. I really have to give kudos to my presenters, Ondine Gross, whose book, Restore the Respect, was our primary tool that we used for the training. And then Teresa Kuzma, and by the way, Ondine is out of Champaign, Illinois. And then Teresa Kuzma, she is an educator out of Canton, Ohio, and her program, Getting Kids to School, was what I had watched a presentation that she did during one of our Association for Conflict Resolution conferences. I want to say ACR, but I also want to be mindful that some of our folks don't know about who ACR is. So the Association for Conflict Resolution is near and dear to my heart because I worked there for a few years, many moons ago, all right, when we were first establishing that organization in the Washington, D.C. area. And then our third presenter was Judy Wells. And Judy is a child education advocate. Wonderful information. And again, it brings the cycle back around to, some of our special ed students that are being bullied and have to deal with different other learning disabilities and everything, as Fran alluded to just now. And so they don't want to go to school. The teachers aren't taking the time with them. They feel that the teachers aren't taking the time with them. And so they just don't want to be in school. And so again, that creates attendance issues, and that creates, a possible truancy case. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to hear, to give me this platform to just share something that I am passionate about, because my children are grown and out of school. And I just really, what we dealt with, if we could just catch them at an earlier age than waiting until high school when they're dropping out of school. It still amazes me that at 16, a student can drop out of school. They have to be 16 to get a driver's license and 15 to get a job. But they can drop out of school at 16, but they can't vote until they're 18, and they can't drink here in Texas till they're 21. It's just giving them too much power. And at such a young age, they're not really, I feel, capable of making that type of decision for themselves. So instead, it moves into, again, that school to pipeline for the prison. And so we really want to make sure that we catch them at an early age to respect, to understand, and appreciate education so that they have their chance to succeed in this world. So thank you all for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
And thank you all three of you for your valuable contribution. I would like to summarize what we've been discussing with some practicalities. The first practicality to me is that everybody who is touched by this issue can request such a mediation, even if you have not heard about it before, even if you think it doesn't exist in your country, state, place where you live. Just make people aware, just call for it. The mediator can be called on spot. That's the first thing. The mediators, the call for you is to find it as a niche, as an opportunity that you can practice, that you can bring good to the society, to the local community you are in, to do something to really make the difference. And having said that, I do hope to see you very soon on our next podcast. I thank our speakers, I thank our viewers and listeners, and see you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.